Well, I'm not sure if we are live yet, Grace. So in case we are and people can hear us, we're just holding for a minute until we have all the technology sorted. So if you have joined us, welcome. You've probably got time to run and get a quick drink if you want to.
Oh,
and now we're live. There we are. Okay, good evening. Welcome to this Facebook Live with Dementia Carers Count. It's the first one of 5 sessions, and tonight we've called all 5 Music Mondays, all with a slightly different title. I'm Sue Hines. I'm Head of Services at Dementia Carers Count, and I'm a practitioner who works with people with dementia and family carers. And I'm so delighted tonight to be joined by a music therapist and health consultant, Grace Meadows. And she's going to be joining us for the next 5 weeks. And this is the first, as I say, of those 5 sessions. Thank you for coming to do these sessions with us, Grace. As I say, it's fantastic. And I know that viewers will benefit so much from what you have to say this evening. So before we get right into the session, I wonder if you could just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, look, it's a real pleasure to be with you, Sue, and I'm delighted to be working with Dementia Carers Count on this series. I think it's going to be a good one. A little bit about me, for those who I might not have had contact with before. I'm Grace. I am a music therapist. I'm also a bassoonist. I was just saying to Sue earlier that I've just come back from a week playing with the World Doctors Orchestra, and it's lovely to play with musicians and medical professionals who feel this as passionately as people like Sue and myself do. And I've been in the music and dementia space for about the last 10 years now. I'm really passionate about trying to enable people to feel confident about using music and why music matters. And so we hope, don't we, Sue, that really this series gives you what you need to help you feel empowered to use music and have a little bit of an understanding about why music helps in the way that it does.
Thanks, Grace. And as you say, it's really about talking about why music matters and giving people confidence. You, as you say, you're a professional, very, very skilled musician. I certainly am not. And I come from this with very little musical background, but certainly in my career, I've found music can be so beneficial. So we'll talk a little bit about how it doesn't always have to be big gestures of big music through this session.
No.
And the reason that we're doing this is some viewers might be aware that we are just in the run-up to the 3rd annual Thank You Day in the UK, which is going to be on the 2nd of July this year. And for those who aren't familiar with the Thank You Day, it's an opportunity to remember and thank everyone who cares for somebody else within the UK. And this year, music is at the heart of the foundation, is at the heart of that. And we're sort of celebrating how music, songs can lighten the mood, bring back memories, help with relationships, help people feel they have connections, and also reduce some stressful situations, or even sometimes give us the get up and go that we need to get up and go. So when we're working with somebody with dementia, often there are communication challenges as well that go along with the dementia. So again, music can really play a part in that. And Grace, I'm hoping, is going to give us some really useful information about the whys and wherefores of all of that during this session, which we'll build out on through the 5 sessions. So it's probably a good point when we're saying that we're going to build on it through 5 sessions. If Grace, you could just give us a little brief summary of how we're going to progress through these 5.
Yes, of course. So today we're thinking about wired for sound. So the fact that our brains and our bodies are inherently wired for music, and we're going to think a little bit about why and how we can all be tapping into that a bit more as we use music to care for somebody or to support ourselves. Then next week, we're going to be thinking about Tracks of My Tears. So this will be focused on how music can help decrease mental and physical pain, anxiety, fatigue, and depression, and what happens when you add a drop of music. What does it alleviate, and what does that bring about? Then the following weeks, this is Monday the 19th, our 3rd session. We've called this My Life, the Musical. This is about how our childhoods and our cultural and social associations form our own soundtracks to our lives and help us and the person we care for to reminisce and recall both positive and negative memories, because we don't want to shy away from that, but also how that helps to be in the here and now, thinking about what Sue was saying about communication. Music is that really, really important communication tool. And then our penultimate session we've called Band Camp, and I feel like I can talk about that having just come off Band Camp. Is about how collective music making and community, and how that makes it feel and what it does to our brains, and how we can then feel more connected to others. And then our final session on Monday, the 3rd of July, day after Thank You Day, will be a real summary of everything that we've explored over the last 4 weeks, and your opportunity to use it as a bit of a pharmacy. Send us your questions, and for us to have a discussion with you about any kind of anything that's come up over the weeks, and also any burning questions you have, or anything you want to explore with music that Sue and I can help you with. And over the 5 weeks, I know Sue's going to talk about this too, is we would love to know about the music that matters to you. It might be a song that you turn to because it just makes you feel great, whatever the weather. It might be a song that you're finding at the moment is really working, that you're using with somebody that you're caring for. It might be a song that actually you just pour your heart out to because it gives you that release and that solace. We would love to know what those songs are, because at the end of the 5 weeks, we'd love to have compiled a Dementia Carers Count playlist that you've all been a part of, and where you'd like to share your stories about the music or the song that matters to you. We'd love to hear them and understand a bit more about why that music matters to you, because each story counts for us. So if you feel like you'd like to do that, you can drop it into the chat, but you can also email it to us in between sessions. But we'd love to make a playlist with you about the music that matters to you.
Brilliant. You've done my job for later on, Grace, to explain that. That's fantastic. But I think that's the thing. We would like people to start sending in those sorts of ideas and those songs from now, really, don't we? We want them to sort of build and evolve through the 5 weeks, and those stories as well is so important to share. And as you say, those songs can have so many different reasons for them being special. I think when I was listening to you talk then, you drew upon the fact that music can have a real impact on our physical and our mental health. It can have an effect on from our biography and what we know about our biography, but also how we form and develop those social and environmental relationships, if you like. And certainly Dementia Carers Count, the one thing that all our practitioners say when they're delivering the live online sessions is that if you're experiencing dementia, or you're a carer supporting someone with dementia, there are so many things that go into your experience as a carer or the person with dementia's experience of a dementia, and it includes all that biography, that mental and physical health and social and psychological support you get. So it just, music and dementia, I think, is just a brilliant place for us to have Music Mondays and have the discussion around that. Grace, you also said people can put the information in the chat. They can, people can email in if you want to, but with the chat in this session as well, if you've got any questions for tonight's session or any comments that you want to make during this session, please put them in the chat. We'll try and get to them in this session. And if we can't get to all of them, because I'm sure there's going to be lots during this, somebody will get back to you at some point. And as always, if you don't want to put it in the chat, you can message us anonymously, and we can sort of work with those as well. So, and I just won already, Keith, a drummer in Leyland, Lancashire. Hello, and I hope this is a good informative session for you. So Grace, as you said at the start, today's session is called Wired for Sound. So I think that's probably a really good place to start and discuss why we called that Wired for Sound. What is it about music?
Yes, and I've got a tiny little caveat, which is that we don't have all evening to chat, although I know that Sue and I could talk about this all evening. So we're going to give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour around what we know about music and the brain and our bodies. And if we're saying anything that you think, oh, I think I know something a bit different to that, pop it in the chat, because we can pick that up and make sure that we're sharing the information that works for everybody, really. But I am a passionate believer, starting at the beginning, that we are absolutely inherently musical beings. So we start to develop our capacity to hear from about 18 weeks in the womb. And this is really important because this is when we start to experience the fundamentals, the building blocks of music. So if we just think about our mums and their bodies when they're carrying us, they have a gait. So they've got rhythm, they've got movement. We're already feeling movement, so it's already been built into us, as it were. But our mothers also have the fundamentals of rhythm, which is heartbeat, and we're so connected to that. And of course, then we develop our own. So we've got that innate sense of rhythm, and that sense of being propelled forward, that idea of movement. But then also there's the voice. So with voice comes melody, it comes communication in the form of verbal communication and musical melodic communication, but then communication with others, and that polyphony and that harmony and dissonance. So all these things that go into making music, whether it's dynamics, the loud sounds of life, those quiet, precious moments, all of the elements of music are being sort of built into us, hardwired into us before we've even appeared. And of course, then when we're born, the first thing that we do is that big gasp of air, and then we're communicating musically with that enormous scream that we hope every baby makes when they arrive. And that's really important, because that's an instant bonding moment. And of course, with mums and babies, they don't develop language together, they develop a musical conversation. And this is something that's explored a lot in music therapy training, this idea that we're communicating through music before we've even developed a verbal capacity. It's our pre-speech. It's there. It's what we do. And so if we fast forward to the end of life, it's also one of the last senses to leave us, and which is why we have to be very, very sensitive in somebody's final moments about the sound world we're creating for them, what we're saying, how we're communicating, and whether that's with music or not with music, but also the tone of our voices, as well as the things that we're saying. So really, music is with us throughout our lives, but before and right through to the end. But also it's that legacy piece. It's something we can pass on to somebody when we're no longer here. So that's not the most in-depth explanation, because we've got an eye on the time, but you can get a sense of not only is music in us, in our brains, but it's also in our bodies. We feel it. Our cells are hardwired for it. Our organs are hardwired for it. So that's why we felt that was a really good starting point for today's session.
And you're right, we can't cover everything in 30-minute session, and it will evolve as we go through, and I'm sure we'll come back to elements of this on other weeks. And just for viewers as well, a deeper look into some of this is during one of our live online sessions, and we have one of those this Friday, not this Friday the 30th of June. I'm skipping half of June. So if you want to book onto that, go onto our website and you can book on, and we will look at some of this wiring in slightly bigger depth, but we wanted to give a taster during this session. When I was listening to you talking about the heartbeat being a rhythm and the walking being the rhythm and so on, and then the intonation of voice, it's certainly the case, isn't it, is that children, even before they can understand everything that we say verbally, they can certainly understand our tone, and whether we're sort of in a good mood, an unhappy mood, whether we're dissatisfied with something someone's done. And if even I take myself, I don't speak many languages, and if I went to a foreign country and I couldn't speak the language, I'd probably get an idea of the thoughts and feelings of someone by the intonation of their voice. That musical pattern is so important for us to interpret things around us.
Yeah, and that nuance in that communication, you can see how that gets reflected in music, in the phrasing, and the voicing of how instruments are fitted together. And so you're absolutely right. You don't have to always be able to understand everything literally to get the feeling. And I think that's what's so important with music and dementia, that it's often said, isn't it, Sue, correct me if I get this wrong, it's not what you say, it's how you made somebody feel. And I think music gets you straight to that.
Yeah, and it can change the tone of the environment and how the environment feels at that moment for someone, and can stay with you for quite some time after. The last few days I've been working, sort of doing some work looking at people's experience with dementia, and there was just to tell this one story, there was a gentleman who if you kind of take a sort of surface look, he wasn't very engaged, he had his head down, he wasn't really keeping an eye on the environment. And then some music came on that the carers knew he really loved. It was Queen, actually. And immediately, he still wasn't physically able to move much, but you could see the eyes, you could see the face, and the whole environment changed for him as the music came on. It wasn't a big change, but it was certainly a change that said that his well-being was being improved massively.
Yeah, and that is really important, because actually we sort of moved to the brain there at that point. What is going on? So there's some fantastic stuff online that people can go and have a look at, and we'll put some links, won't we, Sue? We can share some links, but it's really helpful to have a sense of what is happening in the brain, because that is how somebody's response and reaction to music can be dictated. Of course, as Sue was saying, there's all other elements to the response as well, but it's really good to have an understanding of someone's dementia and how that might be, how the experience of music might then be impacted by that. So, for example, there was a lady I met at a conference once, and she had PCA dementia, so dementia that affected the back of her brain. And she said, "Oh, you know, I'm really heartbroken because I can't enjoy music anymore." And I said, "Well, what are you trying to do?" And she said, she explained her dementia to me. And I said, well, hang on a minute. You're trying to do far too much with it. She wanted to sit down and listen to a whole album. I said, start with like the smallest amount of music and build up from there. Thinking about that point you just made, Sue, about it can be the smallest gestures. I said, go away and just start with like 10 seconds, 15 seconds of a song or a piece of music you really love, you've got a sort of memory of in your mind, and make sure that you've got the setting and the environment right for you, so the right volume, you know, no other distractions going on, and incrementally build up to what's tolerable for you. And sort of coincidentally, a few months later, I saw her at another dementia conference, and she came running over to me and she said, I've done it. I was trying to remember what, and then I was like, oh, okay. And then I was trying not to have any expectation, and she said, I've done it. I can listen to a whole song. And it's just, it's changed my day. I now know how I can manage to have my connection with music. I know what ingredients are needed, and I know what music's tolerable for me. She'd really gone away and thought about it. So, you know, a small, you know, we think of a song as nothing sometimes, but it can really make all the difference.
And almost what you're saying there's a sweet spot. And to try and do too much at once could just become intolerable, I think was the word you said. And whereas if you start small, you know, if you've used a 30-second snippet of music, but that's worked for the person, that's the sweet spot for that moment. And you can either build or you can stick with that. There's no sense of pass or failure depending on how much your time that you've used with the music.
No, exactly. And it's really important, you know, I could talk you through all the different areas of the brain and how they're affected, but, you know, think of the amygdala. You know, this is where we have our emotional responses and reactions to music. If that's been impacted by somebody's dementia, then they may not have an emotional response. It might be a more functional, and that means that you might be able to use music in a much more functional way with them in terms of supporting mobility or encouraging them to do movement and exercise. So it's really important to have this sort of sense of what is this person's dementia doing for them, knowing that it's not linear and it might change day by day, but also what purpose, what function can the music serve for them. And the thing that I always say about music in the brain is that no matter what's happening with the dementia, music's this mercurial thing, and it can find its way through the brain. So if it finds blocked neural pathways, then it will find another way through, because we process music in the whole brain and not just one region. That would be my takeaway on a neurological level, that we process music across the whole brain and not just one region. So, you know, when dementia does start to take hold, there's still that ability to respond and interact and engage with music.
And we know, don't we, that many of the dementias start in this kind of left side of the brain. And this is what many people would talk about as being a kind of computer brain. It's where we have the word for this for being a pen. It's where we have the word for this being a phone. It's where we connect words and we store information in filing cabinets. And that's the one that's often most affected for somebody with dementia. And then this right side is that emotional brain, that creative, that musical brain that allows us to connect all those different ideas, that this is a pen, and I think about school, and then I think about hymns and assembly, And so it's going to by default have those different pathways and connections that you can make, isn't it? Because it's connecting all of this computer into something that's much sort of more vibrant and is sitting more retained over here. So when there's somebody in one anonymous person has said that a mum was able to listen to music and sing along, and even though she no longer sings along, perhaps because she maybe doesn't have the words now, she's still connecting with it to get calmness and good spirits from it. And so she's still able to do that. And I think that's a lovely example where you may be losing some of these words, but you're still able to connect in this right side with all that music and creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've got the neurological action going on there in the brain, those connections being reignited and resparked. But also what is also happening in that moment is the emotional connection to the song, because our hearts and our bodies and our minds are all connected. And so, I've certainly been around people before where they've reached desperately for words before we started making music, and then we've made music with a familiar song that's meant something to them, and those lyrics have just flowed from them, and they've been able to hold on to some of that speech after that piece of music or that song is finished. And it's because that pathway has been a bit ignited again. Music's done that. And again, I'd say, I think this is another big message, isn't it, of ours, Sue? It's very much about personalization, and what works for one person might not work for somebody else on any given day. But it's really about noticing these small things that happen and building on them, and not having too great an expectation. If you are able to sing a song with somebody and they do find words that they might not have outside of the music, that's wonderful. Treasure that for what it is, because you've had a really powerful connection in the here and now. And if there are any other words that flow from that song experience, then amazing. But don't necessarily set out with the intention that you're going to sing a song in the hope that there then might flow a conversation. It's all sort of about managing what the music can do for you in that moment.
Yeah, and I think that links with the other part from the anonymous caller. Is this likely to change as the dementia progresses? And I think we would both agree it will change from day to day, and some days somebody will be able to shine and be able to really connect with your music, and other days they may not be. And so that sweet, unfortunately, what's quite challenging is that's one sweet spot isn't static, is it? It's a movable thing. Some days it'll be bigger and some days it will be smaller. So sort of really managing your own expectations, I guess, about, how you're going to be able to use it from day to day.
Absolutely, and bearing in mind that person's relationship with music and being sensitive to that. So, for example, I've come across lots of musicians who've developed dementia, some of whom have been able to manage their dementia well by continuing to play. Paul Harvey is a classic example of that. But there are other people who find that because they can't play at the standard that they were so used to playing at for many years, they disengage from music, and it can be quite a painful experience for them. There are other people who've never picked up an instrument before in their life, and they're given an instrument. There's one gentleman I know that he moved into a care home, and they said, well, we're expecting him to have about 3 months left. They gave him a guitar, they tuned it, he had never played it before. He's still going. He's still composing songs for the musicians that work with him. So there is a bit of a history, but there's also, as you say, Sue, the here and now, and that, it's so circumstantial, it changes so much, and it's about having that sort of flexibility. And that's where we'd really encourage you to feel confident and to give it a go, because music is an experiment. It really is an experiment. The things to look out for is how is somebody understanding sound? How is the dementia impacting on their ability to hear? Do they find tinny noises or high-pitched instruments like flutes and things? Is that really quite painful for them? How far away do they need to be from the instrument or from the audio device? Are they finding lower sounds more reassuring and comforting? As and when it's possible to have a conversation, talk about that. But then, when it's no longer possible to have a conversation, be really observant. Try and pick up on the signs and the signals of, actually, that's not being enjoyed right now, so we might need to think about doing it differently. And we've always said it's been about the right music at the right time in the right way. So keep that in mind, because what might work first thing in the morning to get somebody up and ready for the day might be very, very different for what you might need to help somebody relax and feel comforted and at ease in the evening to get them towards sleep.
And that's you can't emphasize that enough, really, can we? Because it doesn't take dementia to do that to you. All of us, sometimes I can listen to sort of quite high pitched music, as you put it, and it's lovely, it's just right for that moment in time, or a certain volume on the radio, but another time that would be really jarring for me. So it's really just, please don't, if you're listening and you're thinking, well, how am I supposed to know what their hearing is like and whether they like the high-pitched sounds or the low-pitched sounds? We're not asking anyone to be a specialist or an audiologist or anything like that. It's just watching out and knowing and being mindful that it can change from one moment to another. And I think the other thing you were talking about there, and I know we feel really strongly about with Dementia Carers Count, is music not only is really good for the well-being of a person with dementia, but it can be very uplifting and very soothing and a place of solace for a carer as well. And it can also be a great establishment or re-establishment of a relationship. If you take a piece of music and go into reminiscence, you go back to the relationship you used to be before you became perhaps a carer, a person with dementia being cared for, and so on. And that piece of music will be different whether you're a granddaughter or a daughter or a husband or a wife or something. It's going to be different music for different people. So if I was with somebody that I was close to who had dementia, the music that I'm able to develop a relationship with them may not be the one that you would, Grace. And it's really important carers don't go away and think, well, actually, perhaps this is me, because when my daughter plays that music, it's fantastic and they really enjoy it. But when it's me, it doesn't do it. That doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means horses for courses, really, isn't it? It's different music for different relationships and different people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really worth, Desert Island Discs is so classic. But there is something about that. There is something about, if you're able to, is do that a little bit of establishment work at the beginning when somebody might receive their diagnosis, find out what music they love and how they like to experience it. Again, it may not always be the case, but it's a good starting ground and you can build out from there. Same with learning about hobbies and things.
Okay, great, thank you. So I can't believe, Grace, we're already 2 minutes before the end of this section.
I told you we would talk so easily about this.
You are back next week, and the great thing is that through the different weeks, according to the topic that you talked about at the beginning, you'll be talking to different people. So maybe a psychologist about the emotional well-being that connects with Tracks of My Tears or something like that, and then with family carers as well. I know we're hoping for you to be able to have a session within one of these, so that it won't be me and you each week. Well, it will be pairing you with the most appropriate person for the topic that we've done. So I think, because we're near the end, I'm going to have to go straight to the question now: how to give it a go. I think we might have covered it, but
I think we have kind of covered it. But I'd say start small. Think about the mood. What are you trying to do with the music? Are you trying to calm somebody? Are you trying to motivate? Are you just trying to have a moment of joy? Because actually, forget everything else. Music is there to make us feel good. So I would say start small, but if nothing else, try and find that moment of joy. So it might be the song that you always used to sing together in the mornings, or whatever it might be. Find that song and don't feel you've got to get through the whole song. It might be 30 seconds, it might be just the chorus, and it might just be you humming it. You don't have to sing it, or it could be popping it on a device and having a dance together. Try and be playful with music. Music is there. We are playful creatures, and music really invites playfulness, and I think that's something we lose a lot when dementia kicks in. We get very serious about things because it is a very serious and impactful condition. But the more we can hold on to play, the more we hold on to our internal selves. So I'd say be playful with music, and don't feel that you've got to be any kind of musical expert. We are all musical beings. We all have a relationship with it. So try and tune into that a little bit.
I'll give you one last story on that. Yesterday, we were seeing a family member off on a National Express coach, and we started saying there's a song about coaches, aren't there? And we couldn't think of it, but we were chatting and we were reminiscing, and finally we were giggling, and finally we were singing the song. So it can sometimes be the music comes first, and sometimes it can be the chat that comes first. But it was a funny moment. So if anyone's trying to think of that song now, aren't they? Right, we are at past. And so with that, I think your final sort of message has been give it a go, however small. We're going to please people tell us how you do. Come back next week.
Yeah,
put in the chat next week how you've been doing with it, how you've got on, what did work, but also what didn't work, because you know the message here is it's not one size fits all, and it's not one size will always work. It doesn't. But we'd love to know what the successes were, and we'd also like to know what the challenges were.
Absolutely.
And you can also get in touch with us in between. So as I say, we also have the online session on the 30th of June. If you want to go into a little bit more detail of some of the information that Grace has so beautifully put in this 30-minute session, I think she's done brilliantly well to be able to do that with us this afternoon. And you'll be with us again next week at 7 o'clock for Tracks of My Tears. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I've just seen we've already had our first song come in for the playlist from Martin. Thank you ever so much. Love that song.
Brilliant, thank you. And Martin's also said he thinks the information is really useful, and he's a person who's talking about that from experience. He's finding that advice has been working for him. So great. Brilliant. 3 little birds for the playlist. Great.
Fantastic.
So thank you very much, Grace. And I won't be here next week, but I really look forward to listening to your chat next week as well.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, and looking forward to people joining us for the next 4 weeks.
Great.
Thanks
Grace.
so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.